Quilters Newsletter TV, the Quilters community, is brought to you by Handy Quilter, designed by a quilter for quilters. Sulky, express yourself with Sulky and create with confidence. Brother, it's so easy with Brother at your side. And Quilt Cut, easy fabric cutting for quilters. Hi, and welcome to Quilters Newsletter TV, the Quilters community. I'm Mary Kate Carpetras, and with me today for an interview is Valerie C. White, who is a mixed media textile artist here in the Denver area. Welcome, Valerie.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, it's our pleasure to have you here today. We profiled Valerie in the Meat and Place article in our August-September 2013 issue, but we brought Valerie into the studio for a face-to-face and to bring some of her artwork as well and to find out more about her life as an artist in the textile world. So tell us about where you grew up. Let's start from the beginning.
Well, I grew up in Somerset, New Jersey, in a rural northern area of New Jersey. And what was so interesting for me as a youngster growing up, there were natural clay deposits outside of our mailbox. It was just it was clay. And for me, that was intriguing. So I would scoop this clay up. This was when I first realized that, maybe I like the arts a little bit. And I would try to make things out of this clay.
Was it that malleable?
It was that malleable. And I would also use the kitchen stove, the oven, as a kiln. I didn't know exactly what I was doing. And my mother was kind of riding the fence about it, but she nurtured it and thought, well, if this is what she's interested in, because I asked her later, I said, you know, how come I didn't have a lot of dolls growing up? She said, because you were always drawing or making something. I'd go out and get the weeds and I would try to fashion a basket. So there was always an interest in me doing art,
and
always.
Manipulating materials and seeing what you could make out of them.
Always.
And so what kind of art were you doing art in high school?
In high school, I started doing some wood carving. In fact, I was a state winner for the Celeste Art Awards, which was really kind of fabulous for me as a young woman. I was 11th grade, 12th grade, and representing my state. I didn't win, but it was enough of an affirmation of what I was doing to say, well, maybe I should continue. And it was really funny because I grew up in a very academic household. My brother's a scientist and my sister a scientist, and here came Valerie with the art. And so it was always, you know, kind of what's she up to now? Right. She's got a little pencil again. And so it made, they of course now respect very much and love and what I do, but at the time when we were growing up, it was a little difficult being
But it
the art
wasn't
person.
squelched. I mean, you said
never.
Your mother did
No,
nurture
my
it.
mother did. She did encourage me. If that's what you want to do, then that's what you should do.
And it sounds like that had an impact on part of your career later on.
It did.
Before we get there, so then after high school, you went to Howard University in Washington.
I went to Howard University, and I just wish I had the brain of this mature woman back then, because I was fortunate enough to study with some fabulous artists who were at that time defining and redefining Black aesthetics in the community. It was 1969. It was a time of self-discovery for many people, especially for me coming from this little town. I think it was at Howard that I fell in love with myself, because I had never been around so many positive imageries of African-American people in my life. So it was an overwhelming experience. These were such smart professors that I had, and they were challenging me to be the best I could. And of course, I took advantage of it, but I wish I had this brain going back. I would certainly have done a lot more. Certainly
and
more.
You majored in art.
I majored in art, and the family joke was, you know, you're not Rembrandt, so you better take some education courses so you'll be able to take care of yourself.
So they encouraged you, but up to a point.
Up to a point. They said, you better, you know, I came from a family of educators and artists. My mother's family were full of artists, and but my father's family was full of educators, and so the two sort of integrated, and I thought, well, maybe I should take some education courses and see what happens. And so I taught art in D.C. public schools. I loved the way art made children feel about themselves.
And you had brought that own feeling from your own background, it sounds
Yes,
like, when you were in
it
high
did.
school, just that feeling and
Absolutely.
wanting to be able to carry that on.
Absolutely. It helped me buy into my own school program. So I thought here working in the inner city, certainly it would do the same. And I loved teaching art. I loved it. I did.
And then you said that you started to notice there were cutbacks.
There were
Was
the art
this in the
programs.
80s?
This
Yeah,
was, they
sure
were the
enough.
first to go, so I decided, since I loved making children feel so good about themselves, maybe I would look into guidance and counseling. Maybe I would be able to further talk with children and see if I could do it that way. So I did.
You got a
And
master's degree.
I got a master's degree
At the
in
same
guidance
time,
and
you were
counseling.
raising
Three
children.
children and working full time. I don't
And-
know how I did
And
that.
your husband was also working full time, and
My
and
husband
you were
was
very
working.
busy household.
Very busy household. He was very career conscious, and somebody had to hold the ladder while he went up and take care of the kids and do everything else. And
But you did find time for yourself. You were going to
Always.
You were getting your master's degree.
I did.
That's
I did.
not a small thing.
No, it's not. Now when I look back, it's not at all. No.
And during that time, what kind of artwork were you still staying active and
I
expressing
was.
yourself?
I joined a little quilt guild.
Yeah. When did you start quilting?
I started quilting maybe about 20 years ago.
Okay.
And my first quilt, I remember it because they did a big charity event, and they were making donations to a children's orphanage or children's hospital. I don't remember exactly, but I know it was a cheater's quilt. And I'd gone to the store and I bought this big, what was it, an elephant, and I tried to make little stitches around it. And I bought this really fancy machine that cost me $125. Needless to say, I'd never know that I'd spend what I spent on a machine. And I was trying to do my quilting, but I loved it. And I loved what the group did for women. It made us feel important. When you held up, don't matter what it looked like then, I wasn't serious, but I tried, and it was a good place to be. A lot of support.
And in addition to quilting, you were doing other artwork at the same time?
Some drawing, always doing some drawing, always doing some interesting, hopefully interesting kind of imagery. In fact, it was later that I pulled out a sketchbook that an art quilter saw the sketchbook and said, "Why aren't you realizing these as quilts?" So slowly I began to include that and started making a transition from traditional quilter to art quilter, mixed media.
So for a while there was a disconnect between
There was.
This is art and this is quilting, and near the twain shall meet.
And I can't figure out, I don't mean to cut through you, but I get excited when I hear that because I couldn't figure out why there was a disconnect, why I didn't make a bridge between the two of them, and it still remains a mystery for me.
Well, gosh, that's a whole other episode. That's such a big topic for so
Yeah.
many people some people view it strictly as craft, and some people view it as art that is craft. There's so many gray areas in it. It's a fascinating topic for so many of us, and how it plays into women. You'll have to come back, and we'll talk about that some other time.
We'll talk about that.
And then you became an empty nester around the same time that you retired, correct?
About the same time I retired, I became an empty nester, which gave me the time to put into the work. And I did a lot then. I was really just doing textile painting, not so much dyeing. I was afraid of the dyes. I didn't know the batching and measuring and keeping the right temperature. And I didn't have a place that was really designed for working with dyes. I was at a dining room table. I wasn't really thinking about a studio space at that time.
And if you can kind of talk us through, so it's been how many years, let's say, that you've had the time to really investigate?
About
and
15.
explore? Okay.
About 15.
So about 15 years ago, you were doing textile painting, and then how did that sort of morph and evolve into where you are now?
Well, when you know better, you do better. And I started going out taking classes. And I studied first with Claire Ben and Leslie Morgan from the UK at the Crow Barn in Ohio. That was my first really in-depth experience of dyeing and trying to figure this out. And I loved it. So I went back home and I made a space in the garage for dyeing fabric. Well, you know what happens in October. It starts to get cold, not a great place to work. But the die was cast. I was in it.
It's too late.
It was too late then.
Yeah.
So as it turned out, I worked with them for about 2 years, and the work started to change. It really did. Later, I went with Jane Dunawall. She had a 2-year independent study program,
Oh.
and I think that is where the best has come, not yet to come, has come out now. So that's what you see with these pieces, especially this. This was early on, but you can see that there's a big sense of layering with this work that wasn't here. Yeah, I think there's an elegance that happened following that study program.
That's what I was going to ask you. Like, what's the big takeaway from that?
The
two-year
takeaway
program?
was working with intent, not so many happy accidents. I don't like, I'm always happy when an accident occurs that I can embrace, but I'd like to go in sort of knowing what I'm going to get out of it. There's some intuitiveness, of course, but I still would like to be able to feel comfortable that I know the direction in which I'm heading.
And that program enabled you to really
It did.
kind of
It
develop
really
that and
did.
trust. It sounds like to trust
It was.
your vision.
It was. And I think what happens is when passion and skill meet comfortably, you get good work. And Jane encouraged that with me. She said, why are you doing A when you really love C? Do C and let's see what happens. And that's what I did.
And your work has taken you some interesting places. You've gotten to participate in a variety of projects and
Yes.
had your work shown. Why don't you describe some of those for us?
Well, I have been very blessed to be included in some really good shows and a lot of publications, including Quilter's Newsletter
Right.
magazine, which was great. But I think the highlight so far has been to be invited, and the key word here is invited, to be one of the 44 artists to do a quilt to welcome the Obamas to Washington, whether that's your political affiliation or not. The fact
2008 was a big year.
was a big year, and to have work at the Historical Society Museum was a big deal for me. And in fact, I have that quilt in my home, and everyone walks in and are just lucky to hear a little story about it because it has traveled. And then I've had other pieces that have been well-traveled, and I feel real proud about. It was Ohio River Bluesman that started making some headway for me, billboards and the like, and included in publications too.
And where are you showing these days? So what are you doing?
Right now, I have work on exhibit at the Underground Railroad Museum in Ohio.
What city is that in?
And that's in Cincinnati.
Okay.
And it's called And Still We Rise, curated by Dr. Maslome. And that's what I have going at present, but I'm new to Denver, so I'm looking forward to finding some galleries that will host the work.
Okay. So this project in particular and the one on the wall behind you are more representative of the type of work you're doing now, correct?
It is. I think for me now it's important for, I like layers, and I think that it goes back to personalities are layered. Nothing is one-dimensional or monolithic. It's layers. It's different. So for this root series, I've been exploring what happens under the soil, and I'm trying to express roots in such a beautiful way that it makes you maybe appreciate them differently.
And working in a series, you really, especially when they're hung together,
yes, really
draws you in and you focus more. It starts to really reveal itself. When you see
I
them as a
like
group.
working in a series. For me, it helps to express an idea and push it as far as it can go. I had no idea when I started this root series that I'd be 30 quilts in and still pushing it.
So you've got quite a group here.
I do. I've sold all of them, but I've still.
I was about to say, I can't wait to see them.
Yeah, no, I've sold all of them.
Well, that's not a bad problem to
Not
have as
a
an
bad
artist.
thing. No, it's not a bad thing.
Well, we look forward to seeing whatever this takes you, whatever the next series might be.
All right.
I love hearing about the artistic process, and I thank you for coming in and sharing yours with us.
Thank you so much for having me.
It's
I
our
appreciate
pleasure.
it. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us, and we hope to see you next time. Take care. Bye-bye. Quilters Newsletter TV, the Quilters community, is brought to you by Handy Quilter, designed by a quilter for quilters. Sulky, express yourself with Sulky and create with confidence. Brother, It's so easy with Brother at your side. And Quilt Cut, easy fabric cutting for quilters.